Chris McCandless left everything behind, his car, his money, his future, even his name, and we admired him for it. Those who watched the film split into two camps almost immediately. One group said, "That's what real freedom looks like." The other group said, "How selfish, what about his family?" But here's the thing. Both groups were asking the wrong question. Because the real question was never why Chris left. The real question is why you didn't. And the answer to that question might take you somewhere far darker and far more honest than you've been willing to go in a long time. Chris McCandless graduated from Emory University with highest honors. He was the kind of student professors remembered. Quietly brilliant, relentlessly driven. The sort of person everyone around him assumed had his whole life figured out. He donated every dollar to charity. Then he packed what little he had left into his car and drove west. No plan, no destination, just movement. A flash flood eventually swept the car away. Chris didn't replace it. He walked away from the wreckage and kept going. He burned his ID, he burned his credit cards. He wrote the last check from his bank account and closed it. He changed his name, not legally, just in his own mind, which is the only place names actually matter. He called himself Alexander Supertramp, and he walked north, toward Alaska. Along the way, he wasn't alone. That's the part the romanticized version of this story tends to skip over. An elderly man named Ron Franz met Chris and, within weeks, loved him like a grandson. He offered to adopt him. He asked Chris to stay. A couple, Jan and Bob, took him in like a son. Fed him, sheltered him, worried about him. A young woman fell for him, and he walked away from that too. Every single one of these people saw something in Chris worth staying for. And every single time he left. Not because he didn't care, he clearly did. There are letters that prove it. But something in him couldn't stop moving long enough to find out what staying might have given him. He finally reached Alaska, found an abandoned bus deep in the wilderness, what locals called the magic bus, and made it his home. 113 days later, he was found dead inside it. He was 24 years old. Here's where most people stop thinking. They file Chris away under free spirit or cautionary tale and move on. But neither category is honest because neither category is uncomfortable enough. So let's go back to the beginning of the film. Chris has just graduated. He's sitting at the dinner table with his family. His parents have a plan for him. Law school, a stable career, a predictable life built along predictable lines. His father is talking, his mother is nodding, Chris is silent. Watch his face in that scene. Really watch it. He's not angry, he's not rebellious in any obvious way, he's just gone. Present in body, absent in every other sense. The way you look when you've already made a decision the room hasn't caught up to yet. Now here's the question that actually matters. Did Chris leave because he was running towards something? Or did he leave because he couldn't stand being where he was for one more day? These two motivations can produce the exact same behavior, same packed bag, same highway, same disappearing act. But they are completely different things happening inside the person doing them. Freedom is directional. It has a destination, even if that destination is vague. It moves toward meaning. Escape is reactive. It doesn't know where it's going. It only knows what it's leaving behind. I can't tell you with certainty which one Chris was doing. The truth is probably both, layered on top of each other in a way he himself couldn't fully separate. But I can ask you something. When you think about your own Alaska, whatever that looks like for you, does it feel like something calling you forward? Or does it feel like relief from something you're already tired of? The answer matters more than you might want it to. Your Alaska, you have one. Everyone does. Maybe it's a city you've always imagined living in. Maybe it's a career you told yourself wasn't realistic when you were 22, and then quietly never revisited. Maybe it's a creative thing, music, writing, painting, that got slowly crowded out by more serious responsibilities. Maybe it's smaller than that. Maybe it's just silence. A life with less noise. A morning that belongs entirely to you. Whatever it is, you know it. It's the thing you think about in the last few minutes before you fall asleep. The thought you don't let yourself finish during the day, because finishing it would require you to do something about it. Now, here's what happens to that thing over time if you don't act on it. It stops being a place and becomes a symbol. It moves from the category of something I might actually do into the category of someday. And someday is one of the most dangerous words in the English language, because someday isn't a plan. It's a way of keeping a dream alive without ever having to risk it. It lets you feel like the door is still open without you having to walk through it. One day I'll start the business. One day I'll move abroad. One day I'll stop living like this and start living like that. Every one of those sentences feels like hope, but over time, they function more like a slow leak. The pressure of the unlived life escapes a little at a time, just enough to keep you from exploding, not enough to actually move you. And here's the cruelest part. The most dangerous Alaska isn't the one you went to and it didn't work out. At least then you'd know. At least then you'd have real information. The most dangerous Alaska is the one that exists only in your head. The one you've never tested against reality. The one that stays perfect and unspoiled because you've never let it be anything else. That Alaska doesn't free you. It haunts you. It sits in the background of every ordinary Tuesday. whispering that your real life is still out there waiting while you're in here doing this. Chris reached Alaska. He found the bus, he settled in, mountains, silence, the exact life he had imagined and walked 2,000 miles to reach. And then he opened his journal and wrote one sentence. Happiness is only real when shared. Sit with that for a moment. The man who left everyone behind, who turned down adoption, walked away from love, said goodbye to every person who tried to hold on to him. That man, alone in the wilderness he'd sacrificed everything for, wrote that happiness requires other people. This is not a small observation. This is his man colliding with a truth he'd spent years running from. And what makes it devastating is the timing. He wrote it when he was already too weak to leave. The river that had been crossable when he arrived had flooded. He'd tried to go back and couldn't. His body was failing from a combination of starvation and poisoning. The exit he'd assumed was there had closed behind him while he wasn't paying attention. And in that moment, surrounded by the mountains he'd loved, he wasn't free. He was alone. There's a version of this story where that realization destroys him. And maybe it did, in part. But there's another version, the one I find harder to dismiss, where Chris, in that moment of absolute stillness, finally stopped running long enough to see clearly Alaska hadn't changed him. He had brought himself with him. All the noise he was trying to escape, the expectations, the pressure, the feeling of being shaped into someone else's idea of a life. None of that lived in Virginia. It lived in him. And no geography could fix that. We all believe some version of this lie. If I could just get out of this city, if I could just get out of this job, if I could just get out of this relationship, this routine, this version of my life, then everything would open up. But your patterns travel with you. Your fears have a passport. Whatever you are running from has already memorized your forwarding address. I know this personally. For a long time, I had my own Alaska. It wasn't a place. It was a version of myself I kept at a careful distance, close enough to feel real, far enough away that I never had to actually become it. I told myself I was waiting for the right moment, the right circumstances, the right level of readiness. But readiness was never the real issue. The real issue was that as long as I hadn't tried, I couldn't fail. And as long as I couldn't fail, I could keep the dream intact, untested, perfect. I was choosing the comfort of the unlived possibility over the risk of the actual life. And I want to ask you something directly, because I think you deserve a direct question. Did you not go to your Alaska because you genuinely decided to stay? Or did you not go because imagining going was safer than actually going? These are not the same thing. Genuinely deciding to stay is an act of courage. It means choosing your commitments with open eyes. The people, the responsibilities, the life you've built, and saying, this is what I want, not just what I have. That kind of staying is solid. It has a foundation. But keeping Alaska in the someday drawer is different. It's not a decision. It's a suspension. It lets you avoid the terror of commitment in either direction. You're not fully here, and you're not fully there. You're hovering, and hovering is exhausting in a way that's hard to name because it never announces itself as a crisis. The years pass. Alaska fades just slightly. You get a little older. The dream gets a little more abstract. And one day you realize you've been waiting so long that the waiting itself became the life. At least, Chris went. Matters whatever mistakes he made, whatever was unresolved inside him, he did the thing most people only think about. He walked out the door. And what he found at the end of the road wasn't what he expected. Expected freedom. He found solitude. He expected clarity. He found that clarity when it comes quietly. Not with the drama of arrival, but in small, ordinary moments of stillness. He expected that getting to Alaska would be the answer. What he found was that getting to Alaska was only the beginning of a question. The real work, the work of actually becoming who you want to be, doesn't happen when you arrive somewhere. It happens in the daily, unglamorous, invisible process of living with yourself honestly. Chris was starting to understand that. The journal entries from his final weeks show someone changing. Softer, more reflective, less certain that solitude was the highest value. He wrote about wanting to go back. He wrote about the people he'd left behind. He wrote, happiness is only real when shared. And then, on the last page of his journal, in a hand already weakened by starvation, he wrote, I have had a happy life and thank the Lord. Goodbye and may God bless all. That man, alone, starving, facing death in an abandoned bus at the edge of the world, signed off with gratitude. Not bitterness, not regret, gratitude. Think about what it takes to get there, what it costs, what you have to let go of to arrive at a place where you can honestly say, I have had a happy life. He paid an enormous price to learn what he learned. You don't have to pay the same price. You don't have to go to Alaska. I want to be clear about that, because this isn't a video telling you to quit your job and disappear into the wilderness. That's not the lesson. That was never the lesson. The lesson is this: you need to know what your Alaska is. Name it, take it seriously. Stop filing it under someday and look at it honestly, as a real thing in a real life that requires a real decision. Either you go, you truly decide to stay, with both eyes open, without the quiet guilt of the unlived alternative hovering in the background. But you cannot stay suspended in the middle indefinitely. Because that in-between place, that state of neither committing nor releasing, costs more than either choice would. It spends your energy without giving you anything in return. It keeps you just restless enough to be unhappy and just comfortable enough to never change. Chris McCandless couldn't come back. You still can. You can walk out of this video and do one concrete thing. Not a grand gesture, not a life overhaul, just one small, honest move in the direction of the thing you've been putting off. That's all it takes to start. Where is your Alaska? And more importantly, what is the story you keep telling yourself about why you're not already there? Only you can answer that.